Welcome to the Rocky and Meisty show on this playoff special. That's right, NFL playoffs are here. It's a little late, right? Generally, this happens at the beginning of January. We're close to mid-January now, but we're going to be breaking down every single playoff game separately, actually, which gives your attention span a little break, obviously, which gives all of you fans, I don't know, probably there's 14 teams in the playoffs, almost half the teams in the league, so a lot of you guys are probably fans of different teams. It gives you an opportunity to listen to your specific, and you should listen to all of them as well. But I know personally, of course, you want to listen to your team first. Thank you for joining us. Remember to subscribe to our podcast. Remember to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Now, before we get started, we're going to get to the Raiders-Bengals game first because that's the first game that's taking place next weekend. But this past week, there was obviously a crazy game between the Raiders and Chargers. I do want to discuss for a few minutes. It's crazy to think that the Raiders and Chargers, Chris Collinsworth pointed out on the telecast that they were gassed, absolutely gassed, every single player on the field except for Max Crosby. We'll get to that soon. But he seemed to have loads of energy. But except for him, everyone was gassed, the receivers, the cornerbacks, everyone. And they have to play again in less than a week later after that overtime thriller. So this is the question I want to pose to you guys. And I think it's a very interesting debate. Brandon Staley is a very analytical-driven coach. We know that. He's gone for it on fourth down in many instances, in even many controversial situations. Even in this game, at their own 18 in the second half, he went for it on 4th and 1. It failed, but they also went for it on 4th and 2 early in the game, and they got a touchdown from it. So some have worked, some haven't. Now, they tied the game at the end, as everyone knows. I don't need to go through a recap of the game. And they had an opportunity to go for 2 and win the game right there, which, if we know, John Harbaugh's done this multiple times this year.
Multiple times.
In big games. And this was obviously a bigger game than this is a win and in game. So the question is, this is the question I'm posing to you guys. I'm going to start with you, Yehuda, okay? Do you think that had the tie scenario, meaning the tie was the same thing as a win for the Chargers, not so for the Raiders, but a tie was the same thing as a win for the Chargers. Had that scenario not been in place, knowing Brandon Staley's analytically driven mind, would he have gone for 2 in that situation? What do you think?
So Brandon Staley has been getting some flack for his analytics. Some people love him, some people hate him for it. And he made the most questionable one for me was that 4th and 1 on his own 18. That one was a little rough, but I love that he goes for it. And I think that he would have said, okay, I'm putting it all out there. I've been doing this all year. I literally, half an hour before I went for it at my own 18 on 4th and 1. So I guarantee 100% he would have gone for it. If it was a win and in and said, no tie, he would have said, okay, I'm doing everything. This is like the ultimate analytic go for it move right now. And I'm going to go for it too. See if we can win the game, end the Raiders season and vault into the playoffs. So I 100% believe that Brandon Staley would have gone for 2. And I was even saying last night, I was like, even though he knew about the tie and, so discussed and so much talk about it, that if they tie, that they could both get in. I even thought that after they scored, I thought they were going to go for 2. And Meist knows about that because we had a little wager going about that. But I totally thought they were going to go for 2. But if there was no tie, I 100% believe that he would have went for it.
Okay, Meisty, what do you think about that?
I'm going to argue with this one here. I think he would have field goal. His team was playing. His receivers were getting open. The throws just weren't getting there. The pass rush was a little tough to deal with, but they were dealing with it well enough. And I think that even though, we saw it happen in overtime, I think that in overtime because of the tie, but I think that if they both were playing, knowing that if the tie happens, neither of them make it, overtime would have been way different. They both would have been playing way different. They wouldn't have been playing so conservative. So I think that they would have kicked the field goal and gone to overtime, and I think they would have won in overtime had the tie not been involved.
I hear that, but I think they would have gone for 2 analytically because they would have said we don't want to go to overtime. Our defense is gassed, and even the Rocky said the Raiders were gassed. Also, the Chargers were gassed. I don't think the receivers were making that many plays. They were getting bailed out on these 4th and 10 lucky plays. They even had a penalty to keep a drive going on their final drive, and they were dropping passes and they barely scratching by. So I think Brandon Staley would have said, we need to finish it right here and try to end it.
So I hear both sides, and I've been thinking about this. And I think that there's analytics to both these scenarios, right? Meaning Brandon Staley is essentially, by kicking the field goal, right? If the tie was a factor, let's say, right? So he would be saying, well, we can tie. But the odds of a tie happening are not very high. So if analytics are put into the equation, I still don't know if Brandon Staley wouldn't go for two there. Like the odds of getting 2 yards and winning the game are still much higher,
Yeah.
right? Are still much higher than 10 minutes of nobody scoring, right? I mean,
Yeah.
or nobody ending the game with the lead. So I think, and I thought about it, so I'm not sure if it's the case, but we'll never know 100%. But I think that Staley, I think he wussed out a little. It was the last game of the season. He generally stays true to what he does, even at their own 18. Even at their own 18, they went for it in that game. But it was the last game of the season. The tie persuaded him a little, but I think the fact that it was the last game of the season also persuaded him over the edge a little more. Had it not been a win and go home game, and there was the same tie scenario, let's say, if somehow that played out, I think he might think about going for two there. I just think that because they ran the field goal unit right onto the field, man.
I
Mean, they
know.
ran the right out. They didn't even hesitate. Same thing with Kyle Shanahan. The same exact scenario. Tie was just as good as a win for the Niners, and they ran the field goal unit right onto to the field because they knew the tie was true. But had it not been the last game, I don't know. And it was 0 seconds left. That was the last play of the game. That was do or die.
That was
I
do
don't
or
know.
die.
It was do or die. I can see both sides, but I think Staley might have wussed out a little there. I don't know. This whole season, he's been aggressive, and I love it. I love the aggressiveness. It gets a little too aggressive sometimes.
Yeah.
It's debatable whether it gets a little too aggressive sometimes. We can talk about that at a different time. But yeah. Anyway, I think he might have wussed out a little. A little.
That's the thing.
I'm not calling him a wuss. He's very aggressive. He's great what he does. It's very entertaining. But I'm just saying in that situation, maybe it got to him a little. That's all I'm saying.
You don't need to go for it all the time to be true to yourself. Like the fact that he went for it on 4th and 1 from the 18, I think was too aggressive, like we were saying, and I think that was a bad decision and not really worth maybe the extra 2 or 3 percentage points of win percentage. But if you want to talk about true to yourself, if there's no tie possibility, true to yourself, analytics, go for it. You have about a 50-50 chance, maybe a little more, of getting those 2 yards and ending the season, rather than going to overtime and playing for some fluky play or some, the Raiders could drive down on you guys because their run defense wasn't very good. Like, I think he definitely would have gone for it and tried, but he knew with the back pocket, like Rocky said, he had a tie, so he immediately ran the extra point team on.
Yeah, it's a good debate. So with that being said, the Raiders are now in the playoffs, obviously, and they'll play the next game, right? They play the last game of the regular season, they'll play the first game of the playoffs, and they're going to be going up against the Cincinnati Bengals, who rested their starters this past week, obviously AFC North champs. The Bengals have not won a playoff game since 1990, and the Raiders haven't won a playoff game since 2002. So neither teams have won a playoff game in nearly 2 decades. Something's got to give on Saturday. Something's got to give. The question is, Meisty, we start with you the last time. We'll start with you this time. This is a young Bengals team, and like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase is this offense. How much do you think the inexperience, the jitters, will affect them in their first playoff game?
So, first of all, Joe Burrow is coming in. He's thrown for 971 yards combined over the last two. Well, not this past week, but 16 and 17 against the Ravens. Which is injured Riddle. Then you could be like, oh, Ravens, defense sucks. Expose the defense. And just to note it, that I just saw a stat that said that was 3 yards shy of the NFL record for yards over a 2-game span. So I mean that's hot. And then
wow,
Jamar Chase worries me because of his in-game decision making. Sometimes he can completely lose his mind, like he's just making bad decisions. And then my real concern for them is just coaching. It's playoffs. You have to take bigger risks. You have to be willing to do things you're not usually willing to do. And the question is Zach Taylor up for that? And then I think what it really comes down to is Joe Mixon. At the end of the day, if Joe Mixon, can show up and be, I mean, he had 16 touchdowns over 16 games that he played this year. So he really, if he can continue to run and open up the passing game, that's where they're going to get that's where they're going to do it. And they played a close game against the Raiders until the fourth quarter, and they put up 19 points in Oakland. But I do see the Bengals winning this game. I really do see the Bengals coming out with a win this week.
Dude, I couldn't disagree with you more. I don't think that Joe Mixon has anything to do with it. I mean, he's a part of the offense, but the Bengals have gone as far as Jamar Chase has gone this year. That's pretty much been it. If he plays well, they're getting these explosive passing plays. They win games. If they don't win games, and that's why they've been up and down this year. Joe Burrow has been consistently very good throughout the entire season. Jamar Chase has not been. He hasn't been beating cornerbacks every single game, but when he does, it's unbeatable. And it's difficult for the secondary to defend. I think that's what it comes down to. It's Jamar Chase, T. Higgins on the outside. You got two great receivers on the outside. According to PFF, those are two of the 11 best receivers this year. So yeah, Joe Mixon's a weapon. But that passing game is what's gonna have to carry them throughout these playoffs. So I think the jitters won't get to them in this game, but I think it might get to them next week. Or down the line playoffs.
Okay, we're talking about this week, but I will give you this. If it comes down to in the playoffs in the red zone, you got to be able to convert when you're in the red zone. Joe Mixon is huge in the red zone for them, so that's really when
they have Uzama for.
Joe Mixon comes in as what?
That's what they have CJ Uzama for.
Okay, but Joe Mixon is going to be a huge X factor for them.
All right.
So you say that Higgins and Chase are rated top 11, top 10?
Yeah, Higgins is the 8th, and Jamar Chase is the 11th best receiver according to PFF.
So
receiving grades are in the top 10.
What Meisty is saying, and I kind of agree with Joe Mixon opening up the running lanes, I think that Zach Taylor and the Bengals, earlier on in the season, they didn't, not that they didn't trust Joe Burrow, but they didn't let him open it up like we've seen him opening up in the last two games that he's played against Baltimore and Kansas City. Like he was only throwing, 27 times, 18 times, 29 times. They only had him throw a bunch when they were behind and they needed him to catch up. But then when he was really able to open it up, against the Ravens 46 times, 39 times against the Chiefs, then he was able to throw for 900 some yards. And 8 touchdowns, no pick, just go crazy. So I think they had that philosophical shift at the end to have the run game set up have this pass game set up the run game, which isn't as traditional as having Joe Mixon set up their pass game. But I think the Bengals, they're riding hot that last game. The rest of their starters, but the Raiders are coming in even hotter right now. So the Raiders obviously coming into into Cincinnati. Always tough to go into someone else's house in the playoffs. It's going to be huge. But
the jungle.
But yeah, the jungle. But like Rocky said, like they haven't won a playoff game. I saw a meme that no one has texted about a Cincinnati Bengals playoff game. The last time that the Bengals won a playoff game was 1991 season. And text messaging was invented in 1992. So no one's texted about it. So it's been a while. And like, even though none of these guys have been around, for 30 years, most of them weren't even born then. But like that weighs on you as an organization, like that. So I think they are going to come in with some pregame jitters. And they may start a little slow, especially if Burrow's injured. And if he's got little mobility issues, that could be a problem. But ultimately, I do see Cincinnati winning this game because I think they're the better team. They have a better offense, even though Derek Carr has been, he is, Rocky talks about Joe Burrow being, PFF's best passer this year and being one of the best quarterbacks. Derek Carr is severely underappreciated as a quarterback and as a passer and as a leader, with all the stuff that they've gone through with Gruden, Ruggs, Waller injuries, and Nate Hobbs now with the DUI. Like, the fact that the Raiders are even in the playoffs is ridiculous. But Cincinnati just has better talent, and I think we'll overcome a slow start to eventually pull off the win in Cincy.
I think something to look out for, and I just had it's so fun to watch this player. Right, there's only two defensive linemen that are fun to watch: Aaron Donald and Max Crosby. Yeah. On the Raiders. This guy was working last night against Storm Norton, the poor man.
Oh my God.
The starting right guard for the Chargers allowed 10 pressures in that, what was a 70-minute game nearly. But still, not nearly, it was a 70-minute game. So 10 pressures, which is unbelievable. Obviously, Max Crosby finished the season with the most pressures in football. The first time these two teams played, that is the Bengals and the Raiders. The one bright spot for for the Raiders was their pass rush. They got to Burrow 18 times. Crosby pressured Burrow 5 times, and the Raiders, the Bengals offensive line has struggled, especially the right side, which is generally where Max Crosby lines up. So, I really think that he's going to wreak havoc up front. Just look at how masterful he is. He won 25% of his battles up front the first game against the Bengals. That's unbelievable. That means on a quarter of your plays, you are beating the offensive lineman around the edge up front. He's just so masterful. The way he uses his hands, the way he gets around linemen. It's like it's almost Aaron Donald-esque. I mean, albeit he's gone up against subpar performers this year. A lot of injury-riddled offensive lines, but it's been impressive. And I think it's going to be an X factor. Like, you put Joe Burrow under pressure, a young quarterback, like you mentioned, Yehuda, with the jitters. It's nerve-wracking. They haven't won in 3 decades. And you put him under pressure, force him to get the ball out of his hands quickly. Maybe don't give Jamar Chase enough time to beat a man down the field. Yeah, it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be a tough game for the Bengals, Meisty. I just do. It's going to be a tough one to pull out.
The Bengals come in as 6-point favorites.
6-point favorites. Okay, so do we want to bet on all the lines or just bet money line on all the games? I mean, for nothing. It's not betting. We're just, putting it out there.
Just hawking.
What do you think, Meisty? Should we do it?
Why not?
Yeah,
Let's set our picks. I have the Bengals. It'll be a little bracketish.
Yeah, we could do that. Okay, you got the Bengals. Yehuda, you said you got the Bengals.
Unfortunately, I will be taking the Bengals, but
the Bengals. The Bengals.
The Bengals with the playoff win. Yeah, never want to see a division rival, advance in the playoffs. But especially two of them. But we'll get to the other one soon. But I think if the Chargers would have been playing the Bengals, or if the Patriots would have been playing the Bengals, I think the Bengals would have been one and done. But the Raiders, I think, they are having, you can't call it a magical season because of all the stuff that's going on, but they're having a resilient season. But I think it's going to run out, and they just don't have enough playmakers. Yeah, they don't have enough playmakers. Like the Bengals defense is underrated, and it's been a little, slower recently, and it's been lacking. But I think they're solid enough to get this win.
Yeah, I agree with you. You had a great point. I forgot to bring that up. They really don't have many playmakers. I mean, Zay Jones was supposed to be sort of a deep threat, and Deshaun Jackson, but it hasn't really worked out the way they want to do. They still have Waller in the middle of the field, but since Ruggs has gone out, the weapons have not been there for Derek Carr as much. Renfro's been great, but he's a possession receiver. I mean, he doesn't really have a deep threat anymore. He just, Deshaun Jackson was supposed to be that replacement, but it hasn't panned out that way. And Derek Carr can throw the ball down the field, contrary to what he did earlier in his career. So yeah, I agree with you. Not enough playmakers. I think that, like you said, philosophically, the Bengals have changed and put the ball in Burrow's hands, and he succeeded immensely when doing so. I think they'll do the same thing here in the playoffs, and they'll win this game also. I'm going with the Bengals. All right, so we got Bengals across the board. Even though, Kid, I think it's going to be a very good game. I think that Crosby and the Raiders front is going to give that offensive line problems. The offensive line has struggled over the last few years. We'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, that especially, like you said, Rocky, that the Bengals O-line is really shaky, and I think the Bengals were the third most sacked team this year. Yeah. And if Crosby starts, taking over the game and starts to wreck the game at the beginning of the game, in the first couple drives, and the jitters that I think are going to be there more so in front of home fans. I think Burrow's more of a guy that would have less jitters in front of away fans, because he's more of a stick it to him, stick it to the other team.
Incorrect. In colleges, they're not like that, but continue.
But in front of his own crowd, I think he'll be a little more nervous. And then if Crosby can start working the right side of the line, like he worked Storm Norton Chargers game, that could get really, really questionable fast, and the Raiders could stay in this game. But ultimately, I feel like the Bengals will figure out a way to beat that and win the game.
All right. Wow. Yeah. Let's see what Crosby can do next week. See what Burke can do next week. It's going to be exciting. Thank you for joining us. For all those Bengals Raiders fans, thank you for sticking with us. For all those other fans, thank you for sticking with us even more so. That means you just love football, which is awesome. I also love football. We all also love football. That's why we're watching these games. So thank you for joining us, and everyone have a great day.